The first thing I smelled wasn't the metallic tang of the pasta sauce splattered across my white kitchen tiles. It wasn't even the sharp, clean scent of the pine forest that hugged the edges of my new cottage. No, it was the cloying, suffocating cloud of white diamonds perfume. The exact scent my mother has worn since 1994. My heart didn't just skip a beat. It felt like it hit a wall and crumbled. I stood there, paralyzed, as a single jar of organic marinara bled across the floor, mimicking a crime scene I wasn't prepared to investigate. But the real violation wasn't the mess. It was the sound of voices. Familiar, entitled, high-pitched voices echoing from the hallway where my bedroom was supposed to be a sanctuary. I stepped over the glass, my breath hitching in a throat that felt like it was closing shut. There they were. My mother, Deborah, was holding a measuring tape against the far wall of my guest suite, her face twisted in a look of clinical calculation. My sister, Leanna, was dragging a vintage armchair, the one I'd spent 3 months saving for, across the hardwood floors to see how it looked near the window. They didn't look like guests. They looked like an invading army surveying conquered territory. "How did you even get in here?" I managed to whisper, the words feeling like shards of the broken jar on the floor. My mother didn't even flinch. She just turned. A bright, terrifyingly vacant smile plastered on her face and dangled a silver key from her manicured thumb. "Oh, Posey, don't be dramatic. Every daughter should give her mother a spare. We're just seeing how the flow works. You know, for when the kids are here." The air left my lungs. My cottage. My secret. My life. It was being measured for curtains I hadn't picked, for a future I hadn't invited them into. Have you ever felt the exact moment your skin stops feeling like it belongs to you? That was the moment I realized this wasn't a surprise visit. It was the opening move in a war for my own existence. Growing up, the word fair was a foreign language in our household, one my parents refused to learn. I lived in the shadow of Leanna, the golden child who walked on water while I was expected to just stay underwater and keep the boat steady. I remember Leanna's 11th birthday like it happened this morning. The backyard was transformed into a carnival, a literal Ferris wheel, 3 different flavors of cotton candy, and a professional clown who actually smelled like grease paint and joy. My birthday, 6 months later, a store-bought sheet cake from the discount rack at the grocery store, the kind where the frosting tastes like industrial shortening and regret. My mother had patted my hand, her eyes already drifting toward Leanna's gymnastics trophy on the mantel. "The budget was tight this year, Posey. You understand, family is about sacrifice." But why was the sacrifice always mine to make? When we graduated high school, the divide became a canyon. Leanna was gifted a brand new SUV, wrapped in a red ribbon that seemed to mock the very sun. My father handed her those keys in front of the whole neighborhood, beaming with a pride he never once directed at my report cards. I stood 3 feet away, gripping a plastic-coated bus pass until the edges bit into my palm, pretending the tears stinging my eyes were just from the wind. College didn't change the script. It just added more pages to the tragedy. I worked 3 jobs, barista, tutor, late-night janitor, just to pay rent for the privilege of living in my parents' damp, unfinished basement. Meanwhile, Leanna lived in a sun-drenched 2-bedroom apartment near campus, her rent, utilities, and even her organic grocery habit fully funded by my father's emergency fund. "It's about building character, Posey," my father would say, sipping a scotch I probably helped pay for through the maintenance fees he charged me. "Leanna needs the support to excel. You're a survivor. You don't need us." It's a special kind of cruelty, isn't it? To be told your strength is a reason to be neglected. I learned to swallow my jealousy until it tasted like copper in the back of my throat. I learned to be invisible. I learned that if I wanted a life, I had to build it in the dark, away from their prying eyes and their bottomless needs. When I finally whispered the news that I'd saved enough for a down payment on a small cottage 3 towns away, I expected, a hug, a well done. Instead, my mother's eyes went cold and calculating. She didn't congratulate me. She picked up her phone and called Leanna immediately. "Posey's found a place with extra space," she told her, not even looking at me. "We need to discuss the family's next move." I should have seen the warning signs then, the way they spoke about our house instead of your house. The way they assumed my hard-won independence was just a communal resource they were entitled to harvest. But I wanted to believe I had finally escaped. I wanted to believe that 4 walls and a roof could protect me from a lifetime of being an afterthought. Don't you ever wonder if the people who are supposed to love you most are actually just the ones who know exactly where to twist the knife? For the first few nights after catching them in my cottage, sleep was a stranger. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind against the siding felt like a footstep. I changed the locks, obviously, but the feeling of violation remained like a stain on the walls. I spent my evenings checking and rechecking the deadbolts, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. 3 mornings later, I was sitting at my small kitchen table, the sun barely peeking over the trees, when I opened Facebook. I don't know why I did it. Habit, maybe, or maybe a subconscious warning from my gut. I saw a notification. Liana tagged you in a post. My thumb hovered over the screen. When I clicked, the world tilted. It was a photo of Liana's 2 children, Ellie and Tyler, sitting in a room I recognized instantly. It was my guest room. But the walls had been digitally altered to a bright, aggressive blue. The caption read, "Finally getting a bigger place soon. Family first. So blessed to have a sister who knows what really matters." The date on the post? 3 weeks before I had even closed on the house. My hand began to shake so violently that my coffee mug rattled against the table. I scrolled through the comments, each one a fresh puncture wound. "Which room does Ellie get?" a family friend asked. "The blue one with the bay window," Liana had replied, her tone dripping with unearned authority. "And the boys will share across the hall. It's perfect for the playroom." They hadn't just wanted a key. They had already moved in, mentally and emotionally, before I had even signed the deed. It wasn't an impulse. It was a cold, calculated heist of my future, and then, the ultimate blow. A text message notification popped up. It was a group chat titled, "The Plan." My father had added me by mistake. His words were a physical strike to my jaw. "Don't worry about Posey's little tantrum about the keys. She's emotional, but she always gives in. We'll be moved in by the end of the month. She needs us more than she knows. She always gives in." Those 4 words summarized 30 years of my life. Every time I'd been passed over, every time I'd been forced to apologize for things I didn't do, every time I'd handed over my hard-earned money to help a sister who refused to work. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a soft target. That evening, the summons came. A text from my mother. "Dinner at our house tonight. I'm making your father's favorite pot roast. We need to talk about the arrangements." Every cell in my body screamed at me to stay home, to lock the doors and vanish. But there was a new flame flickering in my chest, something hotter and sharper than the usual dull ache of compliance. I walked into that house, the one with the basement I'd paid to live in, and I felt like a stranger in a graveyard. The table was set with the good china, the plates we only used when Liana won a trophy or when my father got a bonus. The seating arrangement was a visual execution. My mother, father, and Liana sat on one side, a united front of entitlement. My chair sat alone on the opposite side, the seat of the defendant. Before I could even pull out my chair, my father slid a heavy manila folder across the mahogany surface. It was filled with real estate listings, 5-bedroom houses, all within a 10-mile radius of Liana's kids' school. "These are much more suitable for the long term," he said, his voice firm, the voice he used when he was giving me a choice that wasn't a choice at all. "These are for Liana," I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. "These are for all of us," my mother corrected, leaning forward, her perfume filling the air until I felt dizzy. "We've already spoken to your bank, Posey. It's a simple transition. We sell your cottage, use your equity as the down payment for one of these, and we all move in together. You'll have a lovely suite in the back. You won't have to be alone anymore." "You spoke to my bank?" The words felt like lead. "Just preliminary discussions." My mother waved a hand as if she were brushing away a fly. "They were very helpful once we explained the family situation." Liana smirked, taking a slow sip of her wine. "We could even sell that old armchair of yours. It's a bit too small for the new living room. Mark is already planning to use the garage for his truck. It's going to be so much better for the kids, Posey. Don't be selfish." Selfish. The ultimate weapon in their arsenal. My father leaned forward, his shadow stretching across the table like a shroud. "Refusing this would show a total lack of respect for this family, Posey. After everything we've done for you. After letting you live in our home for all those years." "I paid you rent," I snapped, the flame in my chest flaring into a roar. "You contributed," he countered coldly. "Think of the children. Think of what people in this town will say if you turn your back on your own flesh and blood." It was the same old script, the pressure, the guilt, the inevitable surrender. I looked at their faces, the greed masked as love, the manipulation disguised as family first. And for the first time, I didn't see my parents. I saw predators. Have you ever realized that the people who claim to protect you are actually the ones you need protection from? If this story is hitting a nerve, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps me share these truths with people who might be trapped in the same silence. I didn't answer them that night. I just stood up and walked out, their voices chasing me to my car like barking dogs. But the nightmare was only beginning. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in my small town shifted. It started with the small things. The way the cashier at the grocery store wouldn't meet my eye, the way my neighbors, people I'd known for years, would suddenly find a reason to go inside when I pulled into my driveway. Then came the message from Mrs. Hatcher, my third-grade teacher, a woman I had always respected. "Posy, dear, your mother showed me the photos of your new home. It seems so large for just one person. I raised 4 children in a space half that size. Family is a gift, not a burden. I hope you find it in your heart to do the right thing." My mother hadn't just invaded my home. She had weaponized my entire social circle. She was painting a picture of me as a cold-hearted, materialistic daughter who was abandoning her struggling sister and aging parents for the sake of a few extra square feet. Every comment online, every hushed whisper at the local coffee shop was a thumb pressing down on a bruise that hadn't even begun to heal. But the final straw came from the bank. I had been waiting for my first mortgage statement to arrive in the mail, but the mailbox remained empty. When I finally called the customer service line, the clerk's voice was casual, almost bored. "Oh, yes, Miss Miller. We received a request to forward all documents and correspondence to the primary family address on file. Your parents mentioned there was an issue with your mail delivery at the new location." I gripped the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned a ghostly white. They were trying to intercept my legal documents. They were trying to rewrite my ownership of my own life on paper. One more step. One forged signature, and I might have woken up to find I was a guest in a house I was still paying for. I didn't sleep that night. I spent the hours between midnight and dawn installing high-definition security cameras around the perimeter of my cottage. I documented every text, every voicemail, every unauthorized bank inquiry. My home was no longer a cottage, it was a fortress, and I was a soldier under siege. The escalation reached its breaking point on a Tuesday night. I was pulling into my driveway after a long shift, the headlights of my car cutting through the darkness. My heart stopped. Leanna's SUV was parked in my spot. Through the front window, I could see shadows moving. The lights were on. My lights. In my house. A year ago, I would have walked in there and begged them to leave. I would have cried and asked why they were doing this, but the girl who always gives in had died in that basement. I didn't even turn off the engine. I picked up my phone, my hands steady, my voice like ice, and I called the police. "I'm at my residence," I told the dispatcher. "There are intruders inside. They do not have permission to be there. I am staying in my vehicle until you arrive." The flashing blue and red lights arrived 10 minutes later, painting the trees in a frantic rhythm. My neighbors peeked through their curtains, their faces pale in the strobe light of the sirens. My parents and Leanna stumbled onto the porch, looking disoriented and indignant. Leanna immediately went into her performance. She clutched her chest, her voice rising in a theatrical wail that could be heard 3 houses down. "She's throwing us out. She's calling the police on her own family. We just wanted to help her move in. We're homeless because of her." The officer, a veteran named Miller who didn't look like he had time for family dramas, looked at me. "Is this your house, ma'am?" "It is," I said, stepping out of the car. I held up my phone, showing him the real-time footage from the security cameras I'd installed. "And here is the footage of them using a key I never gave them, entering my home while I was at work and beginning to move my furniture into the garage to make room for their own." "This is trespassing," my mother hissed, a sound like a cornered snake. "How could you? How could you call the police on your own blood, Posy? After everything we gave you." "You didn't give me this," I said, the words feeling like a final judgment. "I bought this with the money I earned while I was paying you rent to live in a basement. You gave Leanna everything. Now you're trying to take the only thing I have left. But it ends tonight." The officer turned to my parents, his expression flat. "You have no legal right to be here. You had no permission to enter. This is a criminal offense. If you don't leave right now, I will be forced to take you into custody." As they were escorted to their cars, the silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Leanna's SUV vanished into the dark, and for the first time in my life, the weight on my chest lifted. I wasn't pleading for a seat at their table anymore. I was building my own, but winning the battle isn't the same as winning the war. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was brutal. My father's voicemails were a masterclass in psychological warfare. "You ungrateful little bitch," he'd snarled in one. "We had it all planned out. We were going to move in whether you liked it or not because we're your parents and you owe us. You'll regret this when you're old and alone. I didn't delete the messages. I saved them. Every insult, every threat, every admission of their plan. I was no longer a victim. I was a librarian of their sins. I reached out to Dave, a friend from college who specialized in family law. They've weaponized guilt your entire life, Posey, he told me over coffee. But guilt isn't a legal defense for fraud and trespassing. This time, we let the facts do the talking. I also found strength in places I didn't expect. At work, my manager, Marcy, saw me crying in the break room and didn't ask me to get over it. Instead, she sat with me and shared her own story of leaving a toxic family behind. My coworkers started walking me to my car every evening, a silent wall of protection against a family that didn't know how to take no for an answer. The final confrontation didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in my parents' driveway. They had called a family meeting, inviting aunts, cousins, and even my grandmother. It was supposed to be my public shaming, the moment where I would finally break under the collective weight of their disapproval. The driveway was packed with cars when I arrived. I could see them through the living room window, a circle of judgmental faces waiting for the prodigal daughter to return and repent. I didn't walk in empty-handed. I carried a thick black folder. The room went silent as I stepped inside. Leanna sat between my parents, a picture of manufactured grief. "There she is," my father said, his voice dripping with a fake paternal warmth that made my skin crawl. "We were just about to explain the situation to everyone, Posey. We're willing to forgive the police incident if you just cooperate with the new housing plan." "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I have an announcement first." I walked to the center of the room and placed the folder on the coffee table. I opened it and started passing out pages like I was handing out flyers for a party. "Here," I said, handing a sheet to my Aunt Sarah. "These are the receipts for the rent I paid my father during college. And here," I turned to my grandmother, "are the records of the full tuition and luxury apartment my father paid for Leanna during that same time." Gasps rippled through the room. "And here," I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word, "is the security footage of my mother and sister testing keys at my door at 2 a.m. Here's the transcript of the call my mother made to my mortgage company, pretending to be me, trying to reroute my legal documents." The room was no longer a court for my shaming. It was a crime scene. "You made her pay rent while funding Leanna's lifestyle," my aunt whispered, looking at my father with a sudden sharp clarity. "It was about character." My father shouted, but his face was turning a dangerous shade of purple. "Look at the footage," I pressed, tapping the screen of my tablet. 17 attempts to enter my home without my permission. Is that what family looks like to you? Does family involve identity theft? Does it involve breaking and entering?" Leanna shrieked, her mask finally slipping. "But what about us? We need that space. Where are we supposed to go?" "The same place you've always lived," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "The place you'd still be happy in if you hadn't tried to steal mine. You didn't want a home, Leanna. You wanted a host. And I'm done being your victim." My mother's face was drained of color. My father's fists were curled so tight his arms were shaking. The room, which they had meticulously prepared as a stage for my humiliation, had become their prison. For the first time in 30 years, I held the script, and I knew that winning this wasn't just about the house, it was about the right to exist without their permission. The days after that final meeting were strangely, beautifully quiet. The surprise visits stopped. The false emergencies ceased. The silence wasn't empty. It was a victory lap. My realtor called 2 mornings later. I had put the cottage on the market the day after the police arrived. "You've got an offer, Posey. 20,000 over asking, cash, closing in 15 days. I didn't hesitate. Take it. I needed a fresh start, somewhere they couldn't find, somewhere the air didn't smell like white diamonds and betrayal. As I packed my boxes, I found an old family photograph. We were all standing in front of a Christmas tree. I was half out of the frame, a blurry shadow in the background, while Leanna stood front and center, clutching a mountain of gifts. I looked at it for a long moment, then I walked to the kitchen and slid it into the trash can. When the movers came, I kept only one key. The rest I threw into the deepest part of the lake near the edge of town. A ritual of release. No one else would ever hold the power to enter my life without an invitation again. A month later, I stood in my new home out west. The windows were wide, overlooking a canyon that felt as vast as my new future. There were no curtains yet, no matching furniture, just the sound of the wind and the absolute, holy quiet of peace. On my new walls, I hung different photographs. Me hiking in the Rockies, me shaking hands with my new boss after a promotion I earned on my own merit, me standing on the porch of this new house on closing day, grinning like a person who had finally learned how to breathe. There wasn't a single picture of my parents or Liana. My new friend, Elaine, brought over an apple pie for my housewarming. "I hope you like apple," she said. I wasn't sure. "I love it," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. I realized recently that I've always hated chocolate cake. I just ate it because it was what everyone else wanted. We raised our glasses to building homes, not just houses. Later that night, as the stars filled the sky, I lit a single candle on the counter. The flame was steady, warm, and bright, a symbol of the boundaries I had built, not out of hate, but out of a desperate, beautiful need for survival. Family should be a source of love, not a source of leverage. If it drains you until you're a ghost of yourself, if it erases your worth to feed someone else's ego, then walking away isn't a betrayal. It's an act of courage. I don't know if I'll ever speak to them again. Maybe time will soften the edges of the wounds they left. Maybe it won't. But I know this. My life belongs to me now, every inch of it. Desire whispers louder than guilt, but peace screams louder than both. Loneliness makes dangerous choices feel reasonable, but freedom makes them unnecessary. Have you ever had to choose between your own peace and the people who raised you? Would you be brave enough to hold the boundary, even if it meant standing completely alone? I want to hear your story in the comments below. Let's talk about what it means to truly go home. And if you found your own peace, don't forget to like and subscribe to join our community of survivors. Tonight, for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of the silence. I'm finally home.